Welcome and/or welcome back to my channel. I'm Hannah Blackwell, and today I'm going to be bringing you my most bingeable series. So this video is in collaboration with a bunch of awesome booktubers. Beck Reads invited me to be a part of this, and I really appreciate it. Make sure to click the links below for Beck Reads channel, Lovely Lee Reads channel, and Isa from Fun Fantasy Books channels. Their videos and their channels will be linked down below in the description, so you can make sure to go check out their recommendations for the most bingeable series. So the way I'm going to do this video is I'm going to start with my most bingeable fantasy series, and then I'm going to get into my most bingeable romance series. I think I have 8 series here in total, so let's just go ahead and get into this. But before we do, if you have not already subscribed to my channel, I would love to have you subscribe. Make sure to click the like button and comment down below and let me know what you think the most bingeable series that you have read has been. All of my social media is linked down below in the description in case you want to follow me on Goodreads, Instagram, or Twitter. With all of that out of the way, let's just get into this video. So the first series I'm going to talk about might surprise you, but it also might not because it's my thumbnail picture for this. So I only say it might surprise you because these books are so freaking heavy. I'm like struggling right now. I think each of these books is over 1,000 pages. And so you might be asking yourself, why would Hannah be recommending a series whose books are each over 1,000 pages? And before I answer that question, I'm going to put the stack down. Whew, that was heavy. Okay, so the reason I want to recommend this series, which starts with The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, is because while each book is over 1,000 pages, they do not feel like it. This book is actually what got me into epic fantasy as an adult. And I binged through this series. Like, I legitimately binged this series, and I just couldn't stop picking up the next book. I had to know what was going to happen next. And you better believe that I was pretty sad when I reached the end of Rhythm of War and couldn't continue.
You can cry. It's okay to cry.
Now, I think Rhythm of War was actually my least favorite book in the series, but it was still a 4-star. And The Way of Kings is just amazing. 5-star read. If you don't know what this series is about, this is an epic fantasy series that follows a cast of characters. We follow Kaladin, who used to be a surgeon, but now he is forced to fight in a war. We follow Shalyn, who is becoming a scholar in order to possibly steal an item that her family needs. And we follow an assassin and a warlord, Dalinar, as well. This series follows a war, and we basically get amazing world building, amazing magic systems, and amazing character development throughout the whole series. By the end of this, I was so incredibly emotionally attached to all of the characters and his plots. Oh my goodness, Brandon Sanderson's plots, the way they develop and are so intricate, and the way everything opens up is so amazing. I cannot even describe a Sanders slam. I don't even know how to, but it's basically the last 200 pages of the book, during which all of this shit hits the fan and you find out all of these twists and turns, and everything just gets crazy higher stakes, and you get answers to a lot of the questions you've been wanting to know, and it's just amazing. I don't know how else to describe it, but I just have to say it's definitely one of my favorite epic fantasy series of all time, and I think it is honestly one of the most bingeable series because of Brandon Sanderson's writing style. It is so easy to read. Like, before I was reading a lot of pages at a time, when I was first getting into reading again, I would pick this book up and read between 200 and 400 pages a day because I just couldn't put it down. And that's just not the case usually with me for epic fantasy. I'm more of the kind of person that's reading maybe anywhere between 20 and 150 pages a day of my epic fantasy read, and then filling it in with other books. but this one, it's just, I couldn't put it down. I binged the whole series. I honestly just think that if you haven't picked this up, if you are feeling intimidated by the size of these books and by the hype around them, just don't feel intimidated. Pick it up, because I don't think you're going to regret it. These books are just really, really easy to read, easy to get into, fast paced, with at the same time amazing character development, and you just can't go wrong. The next series I have here that is a bingeable epic fantasy series is The Blade Itself, which is the first book in the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. This series is also super bingeable because it has really amazing characters, while the writing style is really easy to read. It's not dense, it's not filled with a lot of flowery language, but the character development is so incredible that it makes you keep wanting to turn the page. When you finish a book, you just want to pick up the next book. This book is multi-POV and it follows 3 different characters. So we have this barbarian named Logan Ninefingers. We have Glocta, who is a torturer, and we have this knight who is really full of himself, who thinks he's hung the moon and thinks he's better than everyone else, named Jezal. This is a grim, dark book, so we have these flawed characters who are morally gray. None of them are great people, but they're such interesting people that you just can't help but root for, and it's just a really cool, really awesome story. This is not a fantasy series that's going to be really high on the world building or high on the writing style or anything like that. It's a straight up character driven fantasy, but with a very simplistic writing style that's so easy to read. Make sure though, before you go into this, to check your trigger warnings, because things can get a bit graphic in this series.
Which is the understatement of the year.
The next series that I have here is the David trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. The first book in that series is City of Brass, and I think that this series is super bingeable. It has a really awesome balance between plot, characters, and beautiful writing, but the writing I don't think is so beautiful that it's like frilly and takes up a lot of extra time to read, not having to like sit back and reread sentences or anything like that. This is a really cool world because it's set in an alternate universe. It's set in what would be our world, but there are extra cities and magics and things that have taken place in it. So most of this takes place in Egypt and David, and traveling from Egypt to David. While Egypt is a real country, David is a made-up city that is in the made-up country of Davastana. David itself is in what is actually, in our world, Afghanistan. And it is just a really cool way that she like tweaked our world and our history and our maps and changed them up, like half of it and then not the other half. But I just thought it was really cool. I loved this story too for its characters and its writing. In this, we follow Nari. She is a con woman, and one day when Nari accidentally summons a djinn, she meets Dara, who takes her off to where he says is basically like where she belongs, and it's the magical city of David. This is a political fantasy. There is war, there is politics, there is also a subplot that is a romance, there is a love triangle. It's a really good series that really incorporates a lot of tropes that I really enjoy, with really unique world building and beautiful writing as well. If you're driven by unique worlds in your reading, I definitely recommend this as a bingeable series, because once you're in this world, it's hard not to want to stay. Okay, so number 4 on this list is Malice by John Gwynne. This is the first book in the Faithful and the Fallen series. If you're looking for a super classic style epic fantasy that has those like medieval Scottish or Irish feels, definitely check this one out. This series is about a god war that is happening, and in this world there are giants and humans. In the past there was a god war that happened where giants and humans were used as pawns, but the gods have since left the earth, and there has been a prophecy that this god war will come back, and we are now seeing signs that it is coming back. And we follow this cast of characters, and people are starting to take sides and trying to figure out like who is this one that is prophesized to be the savior, and who is this bad guy who is supposed to be basically trying to destroy the world. And so you as the reader are trying to figure that out as well. It is pretty clear, but that's not necessarily what makes this prophecy trope super interesting and unique in the series. I really, really enjoyed this series. I loved the characters. I thought the writing style was very simple and it was super easy to read, but it was also beautiful as well. But it was just very accessible and it made reading this series go by really quickly. The audiobooks are wonderful as well. So if you're looking for an epic fantasy series to read that has those classic fantasy feels, those medieval vibes, knights training with their weapons on a training yard, and princesses, and a quest, and all those things, like this is a really classic epic fantasy feeling series, and it's also a lot of fun. I definitely recommend it. I think it's super bingeable, and I really enjoyed it. I feel like I can't talk about bingeable books without bringing up A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is such a bingeable series. This is a fantasy romance. We're following Farah in a world where the Fae have been separated from the humans with a wall basically. And one day Farah is out hunting and she shoots a wolf, but it comes to find out that wolf is actually a Fae and it's a Fae shifter. So the king of the Fae Spring Court comes and takes her away as punishment for her taking the life of one of his sentries. And so this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and this series is really cool. The romance gets really, really spicy and fun. The fantasy adventure plot gets really interesting. The world building is really good, I think, for a fantasy romance, and I just had a wonderful time. I definitely binged my way through this series. It's really well known for a reason. If you enjoy reading fantasy and you like the fantasy subplots, but you want to try out some fantasy romance, I definitely say A Court of Thorns and Roses is a perfect place to start out with fantasy romance. It's just a really good time. Next, I have a much lesser known fantasy romance series, and that is the Deadwood series by Mary Mystery. This is a Why Choose fantasy romance series. It has pirates. It's mostly set on the sea, and that's something that's really unique and I don't see enough of. And I definitely binged my way through this series, and it made me fall in love with Mary Mystery's writing. I love her Why Choose romances, and this one is really cool because we follow this lunar witch, and she is a badass character. She is powerful, but she has been framed, and so she has to run away. She ends up getting on this pirate ship, and there are these 6 pirates on there, and they're all different kinds of magical beings. There's shifters and vampires, warlocks, a fae, and she develops romantic relationships with each of them throughout this series. What I really like about it is that she takes each book to concentrate on different romances, so that in the first book, it's like 1 or 2 of the guys that the main character is really getting involved with, and then that expands in the second book, and then expands again in the third. So you have kind of more like immediate attractions, and then you have like medium burn relationships and super slow burn relationships as well. It was just a really great time. I loved the plot in this series, the adventure, the risk, the war, the intrigue. It was really, really good. I thought that she hit a very similar fantasy to romance ratio as Sarah J. Maas in the Court of Thorns and Roses series, but in a Why Choose, which I think is just bafflingly crazy. Like, how do you do that? But she managed to do that. And I just had a wonderful time with this series. I definitely recommend. Super, super bingeable. I adored it. Things get super steamy. There are scenes in this series that live rent-free in my head. And if you've watched my channel for any amount of time, you've probably heard me do this rant before, like read this book. I adored this series. Definitely go check it out. Okay, so next I have a series that I have read, I think 8 books from, and that is Sherilyn Kenyon's Dark Hunter series. This is a paranormal series where we follow the Dark Hunters, and these are basically super big, powerful men who have been turned to become dark hunters. They look like vampires, but they're not actually vampires. They're actually vampire hunters, basically. And they were turned by Artemis, and she likes to kind of play with them a little bit. There are Greek gods in this, and the Greek gods are basically playing and toying around with the lives of the Dark Hunters. And there's a lot of intricate world building that actually goes throughout this whole series, which makes it really fun. So there is an intertwining kind of plot and world building and character development that's happening, but each book in the series follows a separate couple. This one right here is one of my favorite books in the whole series, probably my absolute favorite other than the first book. This is Dance with the Devil, but I don't actually own all of the books in this series. So I'll pop up the first book right here. That one is tons of fun. They're all tons of fun, but I just, check it out. Check it out. It's really cool. There are also other kinds of beings in here too. There are, like I said, gods. There are the Dark Hunters. There are witches. There are vampire hunters. There are all kinds of people, and this is set in New Orleans, and it has some just really fun like banter as well. The smut, it is top notch. Sherilyn Kenyon knows how to write some smut, y'all. This is just a lot of fun, and like I said, each book is its own romance, but it's so bingeable. I think that when I first started this series, I binged the first like 4 books maybe in a row. And now I've slowed down a bit. I only read maybe like 1 or 2 books a year, but it's definitely bingeable, especially in the beginning. And I totally recommend it if you're looking for a paranormal romance series to get into. Finally, let's talk about Mafia Mistress by Mila Finelli. This is a mafia romance, the dark romance series, and I totally binged the first 3 books in this series. The 4th one only just came out, and I haven't gotten to it yet, but I do mean to soon. This is a really cool mafia series where our main character, she wants to go to college. She's promised that she's going to go to college, but her Canadian-Italian mafia father decides to marry her off to this Italian mafia, like this head of the Italian mafia, to his son. And when he comes to pick her up for his son, he sees her, drags her back because she is trying to escape. He drags her back, gets her to Italy, but then decides that he wants her for himself. And this is a super steamy time. There's a lot of like CNC in here and like dubious consent, just so you know. Make sure to check your trigger warnings. But things get super steamy. This is some of the best smut I have ever read. And I also really liked how the plot got super like thriller suspensey, especially towards the end. The first 2 books follow the same couple, so they're like their own duet or duology. The 3rd book follows a different couple, and it's just, yeah, super bingeable. The first book also does end on a cliffhanger, so you are definitely going to want to pick up the 2nd book immediately afterwards, just a heads up. But I adored it. I really like the series. I definitely recommend it if you like mafia romances and you haven't checked it out. Make sure to check it out because it's one just not to miss. I hope you liked my list of the most bingeable series that I have read. I had a lot of great ones here, and I know my friends have a lot of wonderful recommendations. Like I said, I'm going to have all of their recommendations linked down below in the description. Make sure to go check them all out. They're wonderful booktubers and friends. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I would love to have you do so. All of my social media is linked down below in the description, including my Goodreads, Instagram, and Twitter. If you haven't already commented and you want to just leave me a comment letting me know that you are here, why don't we go ahead and do the like wave emoji, because I've got this right here and there's the pretty ocean. So we'll do the wave emoji. Just want to send me that ocean emoji, or you can also let me know what the most bingeable series you've ever read was. Until next time, fellow readers, keep reading and living your best life.
Cause you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away.